Hello there, friends. It's your boy, here with another episode of All the Mods. And since last episode, I've been unfortunately fortunate. Well, mostly just unfortunate. So I kind of messed up. In the process of making my videos, I load a lot of backups. I go through a lot of iterations of this world, and somewhere in that, our world got lost in the Matrix. Basically, most of the progress we made last episode has been reverted, so that's pretty unfortunate. We're gonna have to rebuild the canola farm. But the good thing is, we get to rebuild this canola farm. And there are some things that I want to improve upon on this canola farm. So the first improvement I want to make is just getting more machines to process the canola. And this is getting us prepared for what we're going to do a bit later, which is speed up the farm significantly so we're getting more canola in. And another thing we're going to change up is how we're storing our liquid. We're going to use drums from extra utilities instead of the dynamic tanks, and there are some reasons for that. One reason is that the dynamic tanks take a ton of resources in comparison to the drum. And also the biggest reason is because with those dynamic tanks, I was getting a lot of lag in the chunk that the tanks were in. Anytime I placed or broke blocks, there was a big lag spike. My game just kind of froze for a second, and it made it almost impossible to work in that area. Alright, so the main mechanics of this farm are going to be pretty similar to what we had in the last episode. All we're going to do is take the canola oil out of the canola presses, put that into the drum, and then input that into the fermenting barrels. That'll give us oil. We put that into the other drum, and then we put that into the oil generators. Alright, so I put the finishing touches on everything, and I like the way this turned out a lot better than we had it before. Everything is set up the same, everything works the same, but we have more machines, less lag, and all the wiring looks a lot nicer. It's a lot more compact. I'm glad we got to redo this. It's kind of a blessing in disguise. But of course we do need to finish up this room. These conduits showing is not that pretty. So we're just going to make a machine to really quickly cover up those conduits, and if you guys know Ender.io, you probably know what I'm about to do. We are going to quickly make a painting machine, and we will plop that right here, I suppose. So the painting machine will allow us to paint conduit facades just by placing them in there and then placing in the block we want to paint them with. So I need one conduit facade that looks like these scaffold blocks, so let me put that in. We are going to want 9 of them that look like these oak planks for the walls, and then we want 2 of them that look like birch planks. So now we can run in here and finish up this room. If we just place the conduit facades right on the conduits, they cover the conduits up, but the cool thing is we can still access these conduits. If we just hold out our Yater wrench, we can still just click on the conduits like normal, we put it away, and the conduits are all hidden. So that is this room pretty much complete. Sorry that I sped through that quite a bit, but we already did this, so I didn't really think I needed to show it all again. And also, a little quick tip, this laser is kind of annoying. I'm using the laser relays, of course, to route the items from the planter into this room. If you shift right click with the laser wrench in your hand, you can change the particle mode, so that's never show particles and that's only when holding a wrench. And I like it with the only holding wrench one. But nothing is really working in this room because we don't have any power flowing through. And that's because we don't have any power cells. And to get power cells, we're going to need to do Botania. But to do Botania, we are first going to have to rebuild our little Botania area. But in the last episode, we did not give the Botania area the little time lapse it really deserved. So let's remedy that right now.
And my mother sings from her lungs like a bird that can fly like a multiple light, sticking closer with time. I'll be fine on my own. Oh, I think I want love. I want to be alone, want to be left alone, want to call you my own. I guess it's fucked that this is
Okey dokey. So I finished up the building, and I think it turned out pretty nice. So I got the Botania area here, and while I was on a roll, I went ahead and built some more farming area, so I made room for more farms. But for now, we are going to get into Botania. But since we did spend a bit of time on Botania in the last episode, I'm just going to skip ahead to the same point we were at in Botania progression. So we just got the alchemy catalyst, essentially. And I'm also going to go ahead and reset up all the power cells and power cards and all that. So in order to progress a lot and get a lot of the other flowers and items, we're going to need to be able to craft some runes. So we need a mana diamond. And then that and a bit of living rock gives us a runic altar, which we will do all of our rune crafting on. So we will set that down there, and we do need to feed it mana, so I'm going to put the mana spreader right there, and then we have to bind that to the runic altar so it points to it. Alright, so let's actually craft up a rune. So the first rune we're going to make is the Rune of Earth, which is coal, a mushroom, a bit of stone, as well as some mana steel and some mana powder. But the problem is, with this alchemy catalyst, we can't actually make mana powder because the redstone turns into glowstone. So I'm just going to quickly make a little toggle here for my alchemy catalyst. So just using a sticky piston, all we have to do is flip this lever whenever we don't want the alchemy catalyst, and we can flip it back if we actually want it. So now I can make the mana powder that we need. So as soon as all the items in there, it's going to craft up automatically. Now to finish up rune recipes, you need to throw on a piece of living rock, and then you have to right click with your wand of the forest. And now we have the Runes of Earth. Alright, so then we can craft up another rune, which is going to be the Rune of Air. Alright, grab those, and then I'm going to get a little bit of leather just from rotten flesh using the alchemy catalyst. And now with those runes and that leather and a bit of mana steel, we can make the Sojourner Sash. So the Sojourner Sash goes in our bauble slots, and it's a belt that will make us move faster. The problem is we're not actually moving faster even though we have it equipped, and that's because this thing needs mana in our inventory to function. So we need a way to transport mana. We basically need a transportable mana pool, and that comes in the form of a mana tablet. So all we have to do is make sure that this mana pool is sending mana to items. Then we can just throw the mana tablet on there. We can take that off, and it'll fill up with a bit of mana. So you can see on our XP bar, if we have this in our inventory, it'll show how much mana we have. And now you can see that we are actually moving faster. We have a bit of jump boost, and we also have like step assist, so we walk up one high little inclines. Now the Sojourner Sash does not actually use mana, I don't believe. All it requires is that there is some mana in your inventory through a mana tablet or something similar, but it's not actually going to use it up whenever you walk around. Alright, but we have a bit of a problem with Botania. It's that I'm using these endo flames for mana generation, obviously, but I'm completely out of coal, and I've resorted to charcoal, and I'm completely out of wood. So I think we can solve this problem by making a tree farm. We can get charcoal from that, and also a tree farm would help us automate our hoe production over there. And I thought since we're already doing Botania, we may as well make a Botania tree farm. So I'm going to build it right out here, I think is a good spot. And before we start this, I do want to say this is by no means the most efficient tree farm you can possibly make, but I do think it's going to turn out pretty cool. And there are some cool concepts that I want to show you guys that I kind of used in this tree farm, so I'm going to be explaining it sort of step by step as we go. Alright, but before we actually get to building the tree farm, let's just go ahead and craft everything we're going to need so we can just build it all in one go, hopefully. So I'm going to need some snow for a rune, so if you place water next to pure daisies, they will turn into snow. Alright, and then we're going to craft up a rune of water. Alright, so that's finished, and so is our snow over here. And I accidentally broke my living shovel. I was being stupid and I just didn't pay attention to the durability, so I have to use stone shovels now. But we can put in 2 snow blocks, a piece of wool, a cake, our rune, oh well I didn't make it, a cake, the Rune of Earth that we got, oh my goodness, the extra Rune of Earth we got, and that Rune of Water. Alright, so that's going to get us the Rune of Gluttony, which is a tier 2 rune. And these higher tier runes that use other runes, they don't actually use up the rune in their recipe, so we got the Rune of Water and Earth back there. Alright, now we need the Rune of Fire, which is nether brick, nether wart, gunpowder. Gosh darn, I'm awful at throwing things on here. Gunpowder, and then mana, dust, and steel. And actually, I realize I misspoke. The rune before we just made the Rune of Fire, those were runes of winter. Now we're actually going to make the Rune of Gluttony with the Rune of Winter, Fire, and 2 mana diamonds. Alright, there's the Rune of Gluttony, and my inventory is so full, it's ridiculous. Alright, so let's actually get to crafting some of these flowers now. So first we're going to make a Munch Dew, which we need the Rune of Gluttony for. Alright, then we are going to make a Hopper Hawk, which is like this, I believe? Oh, and also for the Hopper Hawk, we are going to need some redstone root, which is just tall grass and redstone. There we go. And then finally, we are going to get a Rannuncarpus, which is like that. Alright, so normally, of course, with these Botania flowers, you have to place them on some sort of dirt or grass or something. But we can get around that, because I don't want to have to place some of these flowers on dirt. And to do that, we can make floating flowers. So first we need to make glimmering flowers, which is just glowstone and any mystical flower. Then we need some pasture seeds, which is some tall grass in a regular mana bowl. And then if you combine that glimmering flower with pasture seeds and dirt, you get a floating flower. So yeah, you can place these anywhere. The glimmering flowers also glow, so I may actually light up my little area here with these glimmering flowers because they look quite nice. But you can see we can place these anywhere. But of course, we want to turn some of these flowers into floating, so all we have to do is just combine these flowers with the floating flower, and then we get a floating version of that flower. So here we have a floating Munch Dew, and here we have a floating Hopper Hawk. And I'm going to explain what all these do in a bit, but for now I just want to get all the crafting done. So let's actually finish up crafting all the Botania related stuff we're going to need. We're going to need 5 mana lenses, and these mana lenses are going to allow us to manipulate the mana bursts that come out of these spreaders. So we're going to make 4 boar lenses here. And then we're going to turn the last lens into a phantom lens, so we're going to need an abstruse platform. And these living woods all look the same, but they are different. Let's make the phantom lens. And now as far as Botania goes, that is going to be all we need, I'm pretty sure. Actually, scratch that. I just made a bunch of mana spreaders, and we're going to make 4 pulse mana spreaders. And then we are also going to make some diluted mana pools, as well as a couple of regular mana pools. Alright, so now we're going to craft everything else. So we're going to need a couple of energy laser relays. We're going to turn both of those into item laser relays. We're going to make 4 sensors from RF tools. Alright, then we need an item interface that I kind of forgot about. We're going to get 4 auto placers. Actually, 5 auto placers. And we're going to get 1 auto breaker, both from Actually Additions. Then we're going to make some greenhouse glass from Actually Additions. We need an item collector from Random Things, and we are going to make that an advanced item collector. And then we're going to make an item filter for that collector, an item frame, and finally, we're going to make an open crate from Botania. At least I think it's finally, I don't actually know. Alright, so let's start thinking about how we're actually going to make the tree farm. So the first thing a tree farm needs to do is plant the saplings. And the Rannuncarpus is going to do that for us. And I have no clue how you actually say this name. I'm probably butchering it, but yeah. So the Rannuncarpus will place blocks that we throw at it, but the catch is it will only place blocks on top of blocks that are under it. I'll just show you, it's probably easier to see that way. So if we place coarse dirt here, that means the Rannuncarpus will only place blocks on coarse dirt. So if you throw out a couple dirt, it's only going to put those blocks on top of coarse dirt and no other block. So that means if you throw out some saplings, those are going to get automatically planted only on the coarse dirt. Actually, we need to pick those up so it stops planting. So it's not the block actually directly under it, it's one below that. But if you have the floating variant of the flower, then it is actually the block right under it. But I don't really want to make a floating variant of this. Alright, so there is the item placing, the sapling placing, done. So then once the tree grows, we have to then break it. So to break the tree, we are going to use a mana burst. So let's place down a mana spreader. And we're using a pulse mana spreader, so we can control whenever it pulses, because regular mana spreaders will automatically shoot out mana if there is a valid mana inventory, whether it be another spreader or a mana pool, in front of it. And so using this mana spreader, we can actually shoot bursts of mana without needing that. Alright, so I've given this mana spreader a bit of mana, and now whenever we give it a redstone pulse, it's going to shoot out a mana burst. So we can easily control whenever we shoot out mana bursts and therefore break the trees. But of course, a regular mana burst is not actually going to break a tree. We need to put a boar lens on it. And what the boar lens does is it will manipulate the mana burst that comes out of the spreader, and it will give it the effect of breaking blocks. So if you place blocks there, that mana burst is going to break all blocks in its path straight upwards. So that is breaking the tree completely solved there. The thing is, whenever we shoot off a mana burst, you see the mana is just kind of going off into the void, and then once it gets far enough, it starts dissipating until it eventually just gets deleted. And I don't really want that to happen. In order to make this more efficient on mana usage, because it does use mana to break the blocks, we want to recycle that mana burst that goes up there. So we're going to place a diluted mana pool up here, and that is basically just going to catch any mana that gets shot out of this mana spreader. So now if we give this a redstone pulse, it's going to break all the blocks. The mana is going to get caught in this diluted mana pool, and then using a regular mana spreader, we can shoot that straight back down. But you see, that didn't actually shoot a burst when I placed it, because this mana spreader does not have a full burst in it. The bore lens will use up a bit of mana whenever it breaks blocks. So whenever it breaks blocks, essentially mana is getting deleted out of the burst. So we're not going to be able to recover all of our mana, but we can still recover enough mana to make it worth saving, especially just saving it this easily. So if we shoot another mana burst, this one will go out, and now this mana spreader has enough to where it can shoot a burst out. So it took 2 mana bursts there to get 1 mana burst back. So the next problem is telling this mana spreader when to shoot, because we have to give it a redstone signal, and so we have to detect whenever a tree actually grows. So that is where we're going to use these RFTool sensors. So I'm going to place this downwards. So the orange arrow is pointing downwards, meaning the output, so the redstone signal this is going to give off will be going downwards. And what the sensor does is it will scan blocks in front of it, and it will test to see if the block we give it here matches the block in front of it. And when it does, it will give off a redstone pulse. So we gave it a log to test for, so if we place a log right in front of it, it'll give off a redstone pulse. Then whenever we break it, it'll turn off. But of course this is only sensing 1 block in front right now, but we can change that. So we can say, check an area of 5 blocks in front of you, so it's going to check 5 blocks vertically. And so what's going to end up happening is it's going to check for logs all the way up to this block here. So now the redstone signal is on. So now all we have to do is take the redstone signal out of this sensor and bring it upwards into this redstone mana spreader. Let's place a couple torches. We're just going to torch tower up here. And I'm using redstone conduit to take the signal out. And I'm doing this because this will allow this whole system to be completely stackable. Alright, so now let's test this out. Let's get some dirt down. And if a tree grows here, the sensor will detect the logs, and it will tell the redstone spreader to shoot a mana burst and break the tree. But that comes with another problem. You see, it broke the coarse dirt because it's going to just break every block in front of it. But there's actually a really easy solution to that. If we just activate a sticky piston at the same time we activate this redstone mana spreader, by the time the mana burst actually reaches this block, this piston will push it out of the way and it won't destroy it. So we can test this out, and whenever we grow a tree, you'll see the piston extends, then it retracts. And the bore lens will not break the piston head, it just pretends like it's not even there and still keeps going. Alright, so the next task is to pick up the items that get dropped on the ground. So for that we're going to use the hopper hawk, and this will pick up any items and put it into an adjacent inventory. So let's just throw some saplings, and it'll put those right into this hopper. Oh, you see it already picks them up actually. Alright, but with this hopper hawk, we can actually specify what items it picks up. So if we just put an item frame and whatever item we want picked up on the container it's going to input into, it will only pick up that item. So if you throw down cobblestone, it won't pick that up, but it will pick up these saplings. Alright, so if we place another container next to it, this container is going to get prioritized over this container. So the hopper hawk will always try and put things into this container before this one because there's an item frame on it. So let's do the same thing we just did. Let's throw down saplings and cobblestone. And so the saplings will always go into this hopper, and the cobblestone will go into this one, because we don't have anything marked here. So all of the logs and apples will get put into this hopper, and all the saplings will get put into this hopper. But when this hopper fills up, which I can demonstrate now, this hopper hawk is still going to pick up these saplings, and it's going to put it into this hopper, which is exactly what we want. Right, so now that we know how that works, we can kind of finalize the item collection and item placing system. Right, so coming out of this torch, we're going to have an open crate with a hopper going into it. So this torch is going to lock this hopper, so we will put some saplings in there and nothing will happen. And let's mark this hopper as only saplings, so we only want saplings going into this hopper. And then let's place our Rannuncarpus down here with coarse dirt under it. So let's place that there, and so the Rannuncarpus will only place blocks on top of the coarse dirt up there. Let's place the hopper hawk on top of this hopper so it will input straight into there. So the saplings will go into this hopper, and any log or apple or anything else that's dropped on the ground really will go into this, and it'll go into the item interface, and that disappeared. So now we need to actually activate this torch, so we're just going to output another strong signal from this sensor. Alright, so this will activate whenever a tree grows from the sensor. So this hopper will get unlocked, drop a few saplings on the Rannuncarpus, and because a tree grew, we know that another sapling needs to be placed. So that's what the Rannuncarpus will do. It'll place the saplings that get dropped onto it. But right now, whenever we throw an item, the hopper hawk is going to pick it up faster than the Rannuncarpus can place it. So it actually went into this hopper and didn't get placed. So we need to somehow delay this hopper hawk to make it wait a little bit longer before it picks up the item so the Rannuncarpus can get a chance to actually place blocks down. Now Botania has a feature where if you place any functional flora on top of mycelium or podzol, it's going to delay its effect. So to get some mycelium, we are going to throw a mushroom into the mana pool, and we get infestation spores. Infestation spores will grow mycelium if you place it down on a dirt block, but we want to right-click it onto the hopper hawk, and that is going to change the grass on the floating island to mycelium. So now if we throw down some saplings, this hopper hawk is going to be delayed so this Rannuncarpus will actually be able to place down a sapling before the saplings get picked up. So if we grow the tree, the sensor gets activated, that hopper will drop some saplings onto the Rannuncarpus, and then it'll get planted. So that system right there is pretty much a working tree farm. This is completely functional, it'll automatically place and break all the trees. And so I'm going to go ahead and add on the other 3 little units that I wanted to place here. Oakley dokley, so here is the tree farm pretty much completed. So as I said, using these redstone conduits allowed me to make this tileable. So anytime the sensor senses a tree grown, it will only activate that row's piston. But all of these sensors lead into this same redstone line that goes into the sapling placing. And yeah, it all works pretty well. And also I had to do some finagling back here to get all the mana into the redstone mana spreaders. So I used a bunch of diluted mana pools because they hardly store any mana. They're really good for just distributing mana across mana spreaders like that. So this farm is working really well, but there are a few things I want to change about it. The first thing that kind of bothers me is how slowly these trees grow, because of course they're trees, they're going to grow slowly. And so to fix that, we're going to use some Actually Addition's greenhouse glass. Greenhouse glass actually has some parameters you need to meet. 1, the glass has to be above a crop. 2, there can be no obstructing blocks between the glass and the crop. And 3, the glass has to have direct access to sunlight. So we're meeting all those parameters here. It may not seem like it because we have mana pools on top, but those are transparent blocks so they don't count, they don't obstruct the sunlight. However, if we had even a transparent block on the underside here, then the greenhouse glass wouldn't work. So even if we had glass or leaves, then you lose the greenhouse glass effect. And you can see how fast these trees are growing, but you can also see the next problem we have is that the bore lens just breaks the greenhouse glass. But I do have a little bit of a system to help with that. So back here I am placing these auto placers. So these auto placers, whenever you give them a block, they're automatically going to place it right in front of them, as you can see. So then we're going to hook up some conduits to all of these. And all of these are going to be set to in-out mode, always active, and round robin enabled. And we will place our advanced item collector right on the side of this chest and set its radius to 10 in all directions. But we only wanted to pick up this greenhouse glass. And so now whenever a block of greenhouse glass is broken, this item collector is going to pick it up, put it into this chest. This chest will extract on round robin, and it will go into one of these placers. Now if the placer can place the block, then it will do so. But if there's already a block placed, then the greenhouse glass is going to get extracted and put into a different placer. And essentially, the greenhouse glass is just going to bounce around in these placers until it finds an empty placer. Yeah, so now our trees are growing quite a bit faster. So another problem we're having with this is that whenever a piston extends, the Rannuncarpus has a chance of placing a block actually on the coarse dirt, like out here. And then the piston retracts and breaks the sapling, and it's just messed up. So we're going to place some half slabs here, but that creates another problem, and that's that this mana spreader cannot shoot down into that mana pool because there's a block in the way. But if we place our phantom lens on there, it's going to pretend like there are no blocks in the way and still shoot mana directly through blocks. As you can see, it's just going right through. But the last problem we have is that this tree farm is using up quite a bit of mana, but we can make this actually gain mana for us, and we can make this a source of mana generation. And we can do this by using the munch do. So I've come out to the desert to show you the mechanics of the munch do and why it's actually kind of tricky to use in a tree farm. So the munch do will eat leaf blocks and generate mana. But the catch is, any block the munch do eats will not drop any saplings or apples or anything that a leaf will usually drop. Now another little catch is that if the munch do runs out of leaves after it's been eating leaves, like it just did, that tree got completely shed of leaves, whenever we grow another tree, this munch do is now in a cooldown state. So it's not going to eat leaves for about another minute or so. So now we have to sit around and wait for this munch do to actually start eating again. And so those are the two main problems with using the munch do in a tree farm. One, we don't get saplings, and two, that cooldown period makes it hard to generate decent amounts of mana. But we can actually solve both of our problems by waiting until this munch do starts eating again, and then breaking the munch do before all of the leaves get eaten. Now if we place the munch do back, it's going to start eating again. We can break it, and we can place it back, and then we can break it. And as long as it doesn't run out of leaves, and we break it before it does run out of leaves, it'll never enter its cooldown state. We'll detect that the tree is grown and place the munch do. That'll stay out for a certain amount of time. We'll break it so it stops eating leaves, and that'll make it so it doesn't run out of leaves, putting it in its cooldown period. And it'll also make it so that it doesn't eat all the leaves, so we can still get natural decay, and we can still get saplings. Alright, so now that we know our plan of action, let's start putting it into effect. So anytime this circuit turns on, that means a tree has grown. So we're going to put a signal into an auto placer, and this placer will be put on pulse mode, so it will place the munch do whenever a tree grows. So we're going to run a line down here, and we're going to give the auto breaker a bit of a delay before we actually break it. So to get that breaker a bit of a delay, we're going to use a sequencer from RF Tools. And this thing is used to set redstone sequences. So right now my sequence is going to turn on, off, stay on for 2 little ticks in a row, and then off and back on. And we can also set the delay of this, so I'm just going to set the delay to 5 ticks. And now when we give this a redstone signal, it's going to follow that sequence exactly. But now you can see it's not doing the sequence again whenever we give it more redstone signals. And that's because right now it's executing all of these disabled boxes, but we can actually fix that by setting this to once to. And so now, once this is going, if we send it another redstone signal, it's just going to restart the sequence. So knowing that, we can put the sequencer facing upwards into this auto breaker, and our sequence is going to be 2 blank and 1 full. And we're going to set the delay to 12 ticks, and this is the magic number I found. So it's going to stay off for 24 ticks and turn on for 12 ticks. And I suppose this is the same as just turning this on and putting 24, but if it ain't broke. We'll also hook up a mana spreader coming out of this, and we're going to make sure this mana spreader is as close as possible to this munch do, so it will always link to this mana spreader. And then we will put a mana spreader here that is going to point into this mana pool, which then gets distributed to all of the other redstone mana spreaders. And also, I forgot to hook up these conduits right in here. We need to set this to extract the munch do and insert it back into the placer after it gets broken. So now we should be able to get an angle of this. If we grow this tree, we'll see the munch do get placed and then get broken, and it will always get broken before it runs out of leaves, so it's ready for another tree to be placed, and then it generates a bit of mana, it gets broken, and it's ready to do it again. Alright, so there are just 1 or 2 more things I want to add to the farm, and one of those involves a rune of spring, so we'll make that. And while that's going, we can make a hovering hourglass. Alright, so now if we throw in a rune of spring, 2 lime, 1 green, 1 yellow, and a redstone root plus a seed, we get an agricarnation. And so these agricarnations are going to boost the growth rate of our trees even more. And these do use mana, so they're bound to that mana pool down there. And then we also need to fix a bit of a problem. As you can see, there's an empty spot in the tree farm. And that's because if multiple trees grow in quick succession, the Rannuncarpus will only plant a sapling on one of the blocks. But we can pretty easily fix that with the hovering hourglass. Now this hovering hourglass basically just functions as a timer. So the length of the timer depends on how much sand you put in there. Regular sand is 1 second, red sand is 10 seconds, and soul sand is 1 minute. So I'm going to put 10 regular sand in there. So every 10 seconds is going to send out a redstone pulse, which is going to activate the sapling dropper thing. And so that means if there is an empty spot, every 10 seconds it's going to try and fill it. So I think that is going to just about do it for this episode. I'm happy with the progress we made, and this tree farm is actually pretty good. Trees are growing pretty constantly, we're generating quite a bit of mana, but before I go, I'd just like to thank you guys so much for watching my videos. You guys are champions if you made it this far. Every day I'm getting new comments of people liking the series and just finding my videos, and that's really, really awesome to see. And I'm also sorry this one took so long. I had to record it like 3 times. The next one probably won't take as long to make, so stay tuned for that one, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye. Hard-shelled ebony propeller hat, glove brakes, grapple and a clutch span. Tuck go to steel toe, metal gates spreading for the dead alive that rented parking space 37. 2,000 out the weekly under cycles to Gehenna gets imploding over 20 buses, fireproof and festive. Corners like a two-tired tiger, so a two-tired rider can accumulate a few